Thank you for coming back. Appreciate you coming back. Hope you had a good lunch. This next conversation that we're going to have, this next session is going to be great. Hopefully you're aware of the efforts that have taken place with CLA as it relates to Pell. Lots of efforts up on the Hill to do all that we can to get back to providing opportunities for people to change that are incarcerated, providing education opportunities and whatnot. And so there's a lot going on with this issue, a lot of work that's taking place, which is a great segue to who I'm going to introduce, which is Liliana Coronado. Liliana, as you know, she's really a team member of ours who we work with. Liliana is our voice up on the Hill. And some of you that may not have a lot of tenure with CLA, I'll tell you that it's really been in the past, probably 3 or 4 years, where we've made a big time effort to become a player up there on the Hill in Washington, D.C. The mantra that we use is we want a seat at the table. If there's anything getting discussed back there that has to do with legislation, has to do with laws, has to do with prison population, we want a seat at that table. And Liliana has been a major part of making sure that that happens so we can play a part in whatever decisions are going to take place. And we can also educate those on how bad decisions affect prison population and whatnot. So Liliana is a great partner. She does a great job of this stuff. I'm going to turn the time over to Liliana, and she's going to moderate this panel. Liliana, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Kevin. I am sorry, first of all, that I can't be there in person with everybody. Is the sound okay? Can you all hear me okay through Zoom? Great. Fantastic. As Kevin said, I'm Liliana Coronado. I help CLA with government affairs, and I am so happy to be able to at least see you all virtually. And again, I apologize that I can't be there in person. CLA conferences are some of my favorite events, and so I know I'm missing out on a lot of the fun and a lot of the good conversation, but I'm hoping to be able to see you all very soon in the new year. The next 45 minutes or 40 minutes at this point that we have with you, we wanted to talk a little bit about some of the work that folks have been doing since Pell grants for incarcerated individuals has been reinstated. And we wanted to be able to share sort of the work that we have done and the folks on the panel that I'm about to introduce have done in the last year or more perhaps since Pell was reinstated. Before I talk a little bit about the work that we did on the Hill to get that done with a number of wonderful partners, I want to introduce the folks who are going to really be digging into the issues in the next few minutes. And I'll do that now. And I'll start with our beloved Precythe, who we all know, who has really, as I said a while ago, taken one for the team on some of this work in the last few months, specifically on the negotiations for the regulations to implement that Pell reinstatement. And then we have Stanley Andrisse, who some of you I think already know. He is the executive director From Prisons to PhDs, and he is an author, has written a book recently, and I think some of you have been able to talk with Stan and get to know him a little more, and I believe we'll hear from him later this afternoon. And then we have Belinda Wheeler, who is the Senior Program Associate at the Vera Institute of Justice. And as you all know as well, Vera is a wonderful partner of CLA's in a lot of the work that we do in the education space as well, and beyond. And so Belinda has also been, and Stan, together, the three of them have been knee deep in the regulations around Pell grants and how it actually is going to play out next year when it gets implemented. And Kevin talked a little bit about the work that we had done. And again, for folks that are new members, CLA had prioritized getting Pell Grants reinstated for incarcerated individuals in the last Congress for many, many reasons. We were a key player and a partner on the correction side in that space and had spent a great deal of time advocating for that legislative change in the last Congress, along with folks like Vera, along with folks like Stan, along with a lot of other individuals and wonderful organizations who were trying to lift up this issue for a long time. And we had a huge victory to celebrate last Congress when that finally got done on the very eve of the end of the session, and we're very happy to be a part of that. And the voice of corrections, coupled with the voice of impacted individuals and organizations like STANS, really was incredibly powerful and compelling on the Hill, and we want to be able to continue that partnership. We thought it would be good to have this conversation about what's next, what are the next steps for corrections, and how some of our stakeholder friends can be helpful, and how we can partner with them in the big change that is coming, which is that individuals who are incarcerated will be able to access Pell Grants again. And the Department of Education recently held, and I'm going to let Anne and Stan and Belinda talk more about this, but I was a witness to this and trying to help decipher a lot of the process and content for folks. But there was a long process of negotiations between Department of Education and a number of stakeholders around the actual rules and regulations for how it would actually be done and what it would look like for corrections and what it might look like for educational organizations and community stakeholders. And so we thought it would be helpful to share with you all a little bit about the process and more importantly, a little bit about what it means for you and what it means for your staff and what is coming down the pike for this particular piece of what we work on. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over first to Belinda to really talk about what I've been alluding to, this negotiated rulemaking process that was just recently, well, not totally completed, but certainly a big chunk of it was completed. So Belinda, I'm going to let you talk about that, and then we'll go to Anne and then Stan for a little bit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak here with my amazing colleagues. So yes, Belinda from the Vera Institute of Justice. Just very quickly, I want to do a shout out to South Carolina and Director Sterling. Prior to joining Vera, I was actually the director of Claflin University's Pathways from Prison program, and Director Sterling actually approved a former institution to be in 3 different facilities in South Carolina. So thank you very much, Andrisse. So yes, for the negotiated rulemaking process, I was personally on the subcommittee, which was a smaller committee, and I was representing consumer advocacy groups in the negotiated rulemaking process. And just super briefly, I just wanted to kind of let you know that the negotiated rulemaking process, if you're not familiar, is basically the first steps that, in this case, the Department of Education took to try to create a general framework of what Pell expansion will look like for July 1st of 2023. So some of the stuff that we are all going to be talking about here are still very much, in some cases, more broad strokes, because we're planning for Ed to continue to be talking to different stakeholders, including corrections, including accreditation, both correctional accreditation perhaps, but definitely educational accreditation, community stakeholders, and educational institutions. So this part of what Anne, Stan, and myself were a part of was really this first step to really kind of create this general framework. So I just kind of mentioned that just so that you know that we don't have a lot of the in the weeds kind of information for you yet, because it's something that Ed is still working towards. But I will say that just as a general point, with the negotiated rulemaking process, it is very clear from both the law that was written in December of 2020 to the negotiated rulemaking process that finished in December of 2021, that corrections is going to have an instrumental part in this Pell expansion. So corrections agencies will have this key role mandated in federal law, and it was confirmed in the negotiated rulemaking process. Corrections agencies must verify that colleges are working in the quote unquote best interest of students. And among other factors, best interest determinations must consider things such as transferability of credits, job placement rates in fields of study, availability of academic and career advising, and whether educational programming and support services are comparable to those offered on college campuses. Momentarily, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about the specific opportunities that we see at the Vera Institute of Justice, which will be really great for corrections. But I just wanted to kind of provide that little bit of a soundbite of my positionality on the negotiated rulemaking process. I will say it was really wonderful to be, to have colleagues such as Anne, Stan, and also Larissa. See Larissa Britton Bostwick from Montana Corrections as well on that process where we all kind of come together and have these conversations. So let me stop there and I will pass it over to Anne so that she can talk a little bit about what she did.
Have y'all ever watched paint dry? Dear God. Y'all ever work with the federal government? Oh God. So I literally am speechless about the process. It was fascinating when it was all done, but it was torture going through it. And I mean, y'all know I don't mix words, but Liliana really, when she told me one day, she said, Anne, you're really taking one for the team. I had no idea what that meant. And that girl earned her money. And I totally appreciate the value that Liliana brings to this association because this process was so fast. I met Stan on a Friday in my office, and the next week he sends an email and says, oh my God, you've been invited to attend the subcommittee and be on the full committee. And I'm like, okay, great. And the week after we were in Charleston, South Carolina, was a full week of the negotiated rulemaking process. And I had to attend from 9 to 4 every day, be on camera, keep my mouth shut, which was okay because I didn't know what the hell I was talking about. But when they started the Pell discussion, Liliana had prepped me, Belinda and Stan had gotten me, Todd Marshall from Ashland University, who we have a great relationship with. They do a lot of our higher education learning in our institutions. And then when you heard Brian and Ryan both say education is so important, somehow I was able to get the position of all of us out there to this group so that they understood how important education, feasible education is for our institutions. And I think it was really well received. So it was a very grueling process, but Liliana coached me through it. My team at my office were right there with me. And it was an incredibly valuable learning process about just how tedious the Pell process and the education process is in our institutions. I don't wish for any of you to have to participate in a process like this, but it was truly fascinating. So I was very honored at the end of it to have been able to represent this association by participating.
Can I?
Thank you.
Stan, go ahead. Go for it, Stan.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to turn it over to you, but jump on in.
Oh, okay. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you all. And I certainly will share a few words on how I roped into the conversation that she very much and you all very much needed a seat at that table. So I'll talk a little bit about that. But first, just to give you a quick introduction. So I'm Stanley Andrisse. I am a formerly incarcerated person with 3 felony convictions. Was sentenced as a prior and persistent career criminal in the state of Missouri, where Anne is the director at now. Of course, she wasn't back then. During that process in my early 20s, I had a prosecutor telling me that I had no hope for changing the decisions that I had been making. I had 3 separate felony convictions from the time I was 14 to the time of my early 20s. And she thought that I was going to continue making those decisions for the rest of my life as I kept making worse and worse and more severe criminal involvement. So she was pushing for 20 years to life. I got hit with 10. Fast forward some time, I did not quite live up to her prophecy. I am now Dr. Stanley Andrisse, an endocrinologist, a scientist, and professor at Howard University College of Medicine, Johns Hopkins Medicine, and recently took my hustle across the pond, and I'm a visiting professor at Imperial College of London. So thank you. It didn't, live up to that expectation that was placed on me. And for me, I've provided, and I'm thankful to CLA to have provided a copy of my book that you may see at your table in front of you, that goes through a little bit of my journey. And I'll talk a little bit more about that tomorrow for those that are available to stay with us tomorrow, as I'll be speaking in the morning. But I encourage you, if you have the time on your flight back, to dive in a little bit. And Anne will tell you, she's read the book, and she mentions it's a as a lot of people have mentioned, it's a full book. I encourage you to get through the entire thing to really see the full picture of this idea that it is never too late to do good. It's never too late to change, to believe in the potential that the people in your custody have. That's kind of the point. It was written for you, actually, correctional leaders and those who are incarcerated. So I encourage you to take a read at your convenience. So my position on the NEGREG committee, so I want to even step back. My organization, which I'll talk more about tomorrow, Prison to Professionals, or From Prison Cells to PhD, it's the same title of the book. We work to increase access to education. So we were very fortunate to partner with CLA, then ASCA a few years back on the Hill, to work for Pell restoration. And we really believe Pell, as many of you may be aware, in 1994, the Clinton crime bill removed Pell, people incarcerated to have access to Pell. And so for the past 25 years, it's been out, did a lot of advocacy to bring it back. And 25 years, not much happened. Then all of a sudden it got passed last year. I truly feel that it was the partnership with CLA that pushed it over the hump. And it was our organization created a coalition called the Unlock Higher Education Coalition, which is a coalition of formerly incarcerated leaders. And we partnered with CLA. We really believe that partnership, when we came together with formerly incarcerated leaders and correctional leaders and said that we need to change this, we are the two main stakeholders involved in this particular type of thing, education for people incarcerated and the people that, that oversee those who are incarcerated. So when both of those groups said we need to change this, I think that really was what got the law passed after 25 years of advocates trying to get it passed. So then fast forward to the laws passed, we need to now create the language that will be the language of the law. So that was the process that we were in. And so we're sitting at this table, and the language keeps saying that Department of Corrections will do this. Department of Corrections will do this. Department of Corrections has to do this. And I'm sitting at the table like, where's the Department of Corrections at this table? There's no Department of Corrections representation. And, Anne and I, one, her being in the state that I was incarcerated in, and two, just having built the relationship since that event in 2019. And three, of course, her leadership here in this organization. I reached out and invited her. And, I met with her in person and didn't fully give her all the information until she said yes. And then I gave her a little more information, but we really needed her at the table. And I truly believe that her being at the table, we were successful in getting the language the way that we really think is best for those who are incarcerated. And my position, I was representing formerly incarcerated organizations that represent formerly incarcerated people. So my position is the same position that I really offer to you today, and we've written it into the language of the law, is that corrections should be working with community partners to do certain aspects of helping the individuals on the inside. And so, one of the things that I really was pushing for is the partnership with community organizations that do reentry work like the work that we do, which again, I'll talk more about that tomorrow. But that was, that was my position really at the table to advocate for formerly and currently incarcerated people. And we were successful in getting into the language that there should be a formal partnership with community organizations that do reentry work. So I'll leave it there. I know we'll get into some more details, but again, it's a pleasure to be here with you. And I encourage you to open up the book and read a couple of pages on your way home.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks to Belinda and Anne. That was that was a good overview of the process and the painful process. I'll say just really quick, I have been listening to Stan's book on audio because there is an audio version and it is incredibly compelling. So please, if you can have an opportunity to take a look at it, I would urge you to do so. I think that I'm going to turn it to the next section of this conversation in a second, but I wanted to just say that this combination of the folks in front of you and representing corrections and Belinda and Stan representing formerly incarcerated individuals or currently incarcerated individuals and community partners is incredibly powerful. It was very powerful on the Hill when we came together to advocate for Pell reinstatement. And it continues to be. It was very powerful in the rulemaking meetings, having coordinated together and really talked through what would be corrections role and what would be the role of community partners as well in getting Pell reinstated and getting it implemented in the institutions. And I think that's where we can go to next. We wanted to talk about opportunities for correctional leadership moving forward in this space. And I'm going to go and ask Belinda to talk a little bit about some resources that Vera wants to share with you all and also some recommendations for you all. And then we'll go to Anne to talk a little bit about how we can learn from correctional institutions who already have very robust educational programs. And then to Stan to talk about the importance of community partnerships in this space. So back to you, Belinda.
Great, thank you so much. So in front of you, most of you will have a handout that has Vera's name on there. We've got a little bit of a snapshot for everyone. If you didn't get a copy of this and you would like a copy, you can come up to me afterwards and give you my information. And then also my colleague Ryan over here, he has some extra copies as well from Vera. So one thing I didn't mention at the beginning, which I should have, with Vera Institute of Justice, if you don't already know, I know a lot of you already partnered with Vera in a lot of ways, but Vera provides technical assistance to the currently 130 different educational programs throughout the country that have been given this Second Chance Pell funding. So universities, such as my former institution, had applied to the United States Department of Education to apply to be a Second Chance Pell site. And then we worked with correctional institutions for us, with Director Stanley, to create a program for students who are currently incarcerated. Later, either this month or next month, President Biden's administration is going to pass down the names of the third round of Second Chance Pell participants. But know that come July 1st of 2023, the Pell experiment itself will be over. So what we're really working with negotiated rulemaking and these continuing conversations that are going to be happening, is really putting this more stable, no longer an experiment kind of procedures kind of in place for the betterment of everyone. So I'm not going to read through the entire document here, but there are two sections that I just wanted to make sure that I lifted up about opportunities for corrections in particular, because I really think with the latitude that has been given with the legal language, corrections is in a really good space to really advocate for programs in perhaps ways that we've never heard of. So I actually think there's going to be some really good opportunities here for you. So for example, one of the things that that was mentioned here. So you know the Pell funds are like $6,400 per year that are used to pay for college. There will no longer be restrictions based on sentence length, nor based on the type of conviction that someone has. So we have to kind of unplug the policies from the end of 1994 to June of 2023. We're going to have to kind of not necessarily forget about them, but just know that things are different from July 1st of 2023. Where appropriate, corrections agencies will be in a good position to work with colleges to transition existing DOC-funded programs to college-taught credit-bearing programs. DOCs could then have the opportunity to reinvest those savings into other education-related needs, such as infrastructure investments, technology upgrades, programs that are not college accredited, and paying for students who are not eligible for Pell grants. So again, this is a very exciting opportunity where you can really call on your college partners to really, they're getting funded. Don't get me wrong, they're going to get their money. They're going to take care of a lot of the funding for certain things, and some of the stuff that you may have already been taken care of will now be able to have your new educational partner kind of take care of that, and then again, restructure, replace that money into different areas of education for your programs. We've got here under the Second Chance Pell Experimental Sites Initiative, so that's the first, second, and third round. Colleges have been offering programs such as bachelor's degrees, associate's degrees, applied associate's degrees in automotive, welding, business, HVAC, human services. Corrections and colleges, we really think now will be in a very good position to work together, also with community partners, to identify programs in high wage, high demand areas that will lead to the best outcomes for students. And then on the second part of the document, we've got some heading here about, don't wait, DOCs can act now. In some ways, July 1st of 2023 seems like a really long way away, but, certain things, certain areas of our lives kind of go as slow as molasses, and, sometimes things move really quickly too. So we at Vera, as a national nonprofit, are here to provide resources for you. It's a great time now to engage with existing college partners that you have, new university and college partners, workforce boards, state higher education offices such as SHIO, and community-based organizations. Trying to kind of create that statewide coalition is so helpful for you. And I know a lot of you have actually already started your statewide coalitions, either with or without your support too. So, just really trying to make sure that by the time we get to July 2023, that most of you have got a lot of that infrastructure so that you can be well placed to kind of hit the ground running when all this starts for fall of 2023. We also identified here, I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's a list of engaging key DOC staff to understand the impact of Pell restoration. In some of your different correctional facilities, a lot of your employees might be very well versed in Pell and what's coming down the pipeline. I imagine a lot of them probably have not heard much about it at all. So it's really important to kind of talking with all your different stakeholders within your state DOC to kind of come together to start to kind of organize a plan. Two other points I just want to mention, and then I'll pass it over to my colleague Anne. I think it's really important to, at Vera, my colleague Brian, who's sitting over there, he has been with Vera for 4 years, and one of the many wonderful things that he is doing is leading Vera's Correctional Education Leadership Academy. In the first cohort, we've had education directors or assistant directors from Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Kansas, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maine, Michigan, Nevada, New Hampshire, Oregon, and Wisconsin. And that was in our first cohort. This is completely free that Vera offers to correctional education leaders. Our second cohort applications are now available. So please take some time to take a look at that. Talk with your key stakeholders in your state. I think that this is a really valuable program that will really help your educational leader, directors really kind of have more of support as they're preparing for Pell expansion. And then finally, I've just got the email address there of my director, Margaret DeZeriga. She, she is the brain trust behind all the different things that Brian, myself, and others are doing. Please feel free to reach out to her, because as a national nonprofit, we are here to help everyone in this space to make, things equitable, accessible for community stakeholders. So thank you all for your time.
So I think you can see that I was in good hands with Belinda on the call. Just a couple asks that I would have for this group. One is you really need to understand what's involved with our population that's participating in college classes. As I listened to some of the discussion, and there were conversations like, certain groups have to have a 50% completion rate or higher. Well, when I started thinking about a higher education institution having to have a completion rate for people incarcerated of 50% or higher, then the corrections people are going, okay, wait a minute, that's not necessarily the institution's fault, because we're transferring people left and right, and they haven't had a chance to finish their program. So we really need to be mindful, and I appreciate Belinda's bullets here, because we offer programs, but do we realize when we're in the course of transferring people that it interrupts their ability to complete the program? And they may go to a facility that doesn't have the same program. They may go to a facility that doesn't appreciate the fact that the offender has a tablet and he has the ability to participate virtually, but they don't allow that. So I just want you to be really mindful about what is it we're trying to have our folks do, be busy or be successful. And so when they're participating in the college classes, let that be a priority, just like treatment or whatever. So I mentioned that. And then the other piece is, if any of you have really strong education programs where you're very effective at using your Pell dollars, let me know, so that we can put it on the website, so that when other people reach out, we can send you to the experts in the room. I am not the expert, nor do I pretend to be, but I know there are some of you in this room that are, and your education programs are top notch. If you have that, please share them with us so that we can rely on each other, because we know this business way better than anybody else outside of our organization. And we have to be the ones to help each other out. And then the last thing I would say is make this a priority. It is really, really important. I think both Brian Sterling and Ryan said it best today when they said education is the most important thing we can do for the people that we're entrusted with. And that is whether they are with us for life or whether they're with us for a short time and they're getting back out in the community. So make the education a priority, and let's get as many people through the system as we can.
Thank you. So my ask, if I will say it in that way, is how are you thinking about partnering with community partners and people that offer reentry services? I was having a conversation yesterday with a gentleman that Ann and I were sitting with. I forget the gentleman. Yes. So in our conversation, we were talking about how if you as a father, you tell your child something, sometimes there's kind of a conflict of interest there where you may not be able to get the message across as good as, say, an uncle or another family friend that has just a different level of interaction. It's a similar way with, how you interact with people who are incarcerated. There's just a conflict of interest between you and the people incarcerated. And there's just a level, it is just hard for that conflict to be separated. It can't. I mean, you are, overseeing that individual, and that individual knows that certain things that they may share with you could potentially, introduce a conflict. So there has to be a third party involved that there is trusted, and the party that trusts, that you trust, and that you trust that the person trusts. And that's where community partners come in, but not just community partners, really working with organizations that are led by formerly incarcerated individuals. And again, that was my position on the committee, was to say we were successful in getting into the language that there needs to be partnerships with organizations such as that. And that's kind of what Belinda was just mentioning, that Vera is going to work to help you build these coalitions that are to include, reentry organizations and community organizations. There's just, myself, I was sharing as we were talking yesterday about how when I was, a doctor at Johns Hopkins, and I was still on supervision, and I had moved. I'm originally from Ferguson, Missouri, and all my involvement in the criminal legal system was in Missouri. I got out, was able to move forward with my life and career, and got a job at Johns Hopkins, and I moved to Maryland. I had to get an interstate compact, and I'm, working as a doctor at Johns Hopkins and still on parole. And I would go to my PO, and my PO would constantly threaten to send me back to prison. And, I'm working as, an endocrinologist at Johns Hopkins, and yet she felt that I was doing things that could send me back, and was constantly threatening to send me back. So as you could imagine, I was very fearful of what to share with her. There was a conflict of interest there. Like, I couldn't even tell her the good things that I was doing, because I feared that she was going to try to find a way to tangle it up and send me back to prison. So there's just these, these conflicts that arise that it benefits everyone for you to partner with organizations that are led by formerly incarcerated individuals, and that have those individuals connecting with your currently incarcerated population. So my ask to you would be to reach out and connect with organizations that are led by formerly incarcerated individuals. And I know partly what we will be doing with, as I was just talking with Belinda, we hope to be working with Vera to really host workshops for correctional partners and university partners on how to connect with community partners to do this work.
Great. Thank you, Belinda and Stan and Ann. We are running up against time. We wanted to be able to have some Q&A, but before we turn to that, and I'm gonna open it up for Q&A, I'm gonna let Ann, since I'm not in the room, sort of let us know if there are questions. I can't see through the membership and sort of moderate the Q&A. But before I do that, I wanted to just say that as this process continues, we will continue to keep you all informed. And when the regulations are finalized, we will also make sure to share that with you. But we wanted to be sure to let you know sort of what's come after we did the advocacy on the Hill, and what's coming, what CLA has been doing since then, and reassure you that the voice of corrections, along with our partners there at the table, is being considered and is influential. So we kind of wanted to keep you informed every step of the way as much as possible. And there's still some things yet to be determined, but the notion that we'll continue to partner with the folks at the table now and in the community, we just wanted to share that with you, and also give you an opportunity to ask any questions about kind of what it's looking like and what might be the responsibilities of corrections in this space, of which Ann and Belinda and Stan know quite a bit about, because they just finished that consensus negotiated rulemaking. So Ann, I'll open it for questions, and I'm going to let you take it from here.
Perfect, thank you. So I know Solomon's got a question.
Third bullet point under the Pell Restoration Opportunity to Expand Programming section, it talks about that funding will be allowed to be used for academic, which obviously makes sense, and workforce degrees as well as vocational certificates. Have there been any discussions during the rulemaking phase as to what the scope of those vocational certificates and workforce degrees are going to encompass requirements for those programs or service providers, minimum hour requirements, those types of things, because that's really where we're trying to move more toward in Arkansas is investing around for education.
Okay. Yeah, so we didn't get too much into the specifics of exactly, what things were going to be, rolling out, but there were sections, and I can forward you the NEGREG document that talks about like, the 600 hours. Another thing I would add there too is during the Pell experiment, educational institutions were strongly encouraged to help people who, if they were currently taking classes, but then their correctional time finished, and then they were still taking classes on the outside, there was an expectation of hope that those educational institutions would help those students continue their education. But under the experiment, those Pell funds didn't follow them outside of the carceral space. Now, with Pell expansion of July of 2023, everyone, whether they're, as long as they're signing up for an appropriate education program, whether they are currently incarcerated or formerly incarcerated, those Pell funds will actually follow them. So if a student starts a program and they get a semester done before they're released, then those Pell funds will be able to follow them, which is very different and very exciting, which we weren't able to do with the experiment. So I just wanted to make sure I have that detail too. Thank you. Brian?
Sure. I just want to add, in addition to Claflin, we're doing this at Northeast Tech, which is part of our state, named. And we had a graduation a couple years ago, which I attended. For me, it's kind of BC, which is before COVID. It seems like it's years ago. But the conversations are easier with legislators and U.S. senators and stuff around technicals, Marcus said, as opposed to the colleges, just from what we've seen. But very successful with the technical, very successful with Claflin. So thank you very much. Technical is really, that's where we're going, because there's just so much need. Conversations, Liliana, that we've had with I've had with senators, I can see them getting behind the technical part, the technical colleges, and hopefully maybe eventually they'll get behind the colleges. Those conversations have not been easy.
And if I could jump on that too, I think one of the strengths of these kind of statewide coalitions is, and that was something that we were doing when I had my former platform, was creating SC CHEP, so South Carolina Higher Education Prison, which was modeled on Georgia CHEP, which our colleague has created. And it's this whole idea of bringing together educational partners, whether it's baccalaureate degree granting, technical, bringing corrections together, bringing the community partners, and then also the government agencies together, so that, say, for example, I know one of the schools that's applying to the third round in South Carolina is Denmark Technical. Having conversations with them, wearing my Vera hat, where they would have conversations with Claflin, because Denmark Technical is one of the few historically Black technical colleges in the country, and having conversations with now they have an MOU between Denmark Tech and Claflin, so that it provides more opportunities, for individuals, so that, not everyone needs to be, have a bachelor's degree, a master's, or a PhD. Just having that technical degree, as a welder or something, would make more money than most of us sitting here at the table. So, it's really good, and I think those statewide plans really help.
One joke I can say, but it actually happened to me, was I had some problems with plumbing in my house, and the plumber came and he poured something down the drain. It was like $185. I was like, I'm a private practice lawyer. That's more than I charge an hour. And he said, yeah, I used to be a lawyer too. They literally.
Scott, simple.
I put it under the category of benefits, and that's the relationship with educational opportunities in harm reduction. And what we found in Connecticut was people that were partaking education, all kinds of education, even if they were on the waiting list, were less likely to cause harm. And that improves the health and wellness of your facility for the staff and incarcerated population. To me, that's the big sell for it. And I just want to bring that up. Thank you.
Anybody else? Helen?
Is looking at the recent Transportation Act that's passed. I know that doesn't sound like it has linkage here, but there's a section on digital equity program grants. It explicitly includes people who are incarcerated in federal facilities, but it includes those in state correctional facilities, and it talks about the technological infrastructure barriers that we could be facing in some of our older facilities. I'm just wondering if that's been part of the dialogue, because we have a lot of great collaborations in our state with our connected colleges, but for us, it's getting through the antiquated infrastructure to create that technological linkage.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yes, with NAGREG, although we didn't specifically talk exactly about that, there is this expectation holistically that if an educational program, say it's plumbing, happens in a virtual setting, or happens in a carceral space, and what a plumbing, the programming happens on an actual traditional campus, that level of access for technology and things like that, the NAGREG mandates that the schools are offering almost as close to identical as possible with the security concerns and things of that nature. So accreditation agencies are a big part of the negotiated rulemaking process too, and they too will have to make sure that, say for example, if students have access to computers on a technical, on the main campus for plumbing or whatever, and they don't have access to it in the correctional setting, that's a problem. And that's, again, this is where we get from the experiment, where kind of not necessarily everything went, but it was a little loosey-goosey in certain areas. And, again, that experiment is kind of, and some programs are doing an exceptional job, and they're really like leaders, in the space anyway. So moving over to no experiment anymore, they're going to just do completely fine because they were doing such an exceptional job anyways. But for some programs where technology was a little like, yeah, we're just going to not do it because we haven't worked with corrections to figure out a way to make this happen, that won't be allowed in. Corrections will be in a good position now to, again, talk with all those different stakeholders and say, look, you promised this for your students on a traditional campus. Let's work together to see within the periphery of, what needs to happen with corrections, how we can get this to as close as possible. I think what you said with the Transportation Act, I think also the broadband bill, I think there's going to be some pretty significant changes to the better for accessibility for technology in that capacity. And then also Vera just got a grant fairly recently with BJA for workforce competencies, and we're going to be providing technical assistance to a lot of programs that are really focused on that technical side things as well. And I can see that we're going to be doing a lot of work about that accessibility because, like you said, it's so integral. Tony?
Education in this country and incarceration. And I remember all too well in 1994 when Pell tried to letters and it didn't work. And we also in our state at that time, was tapped. My governor now this year is state. We're still tapping as well. So a lot of exciting possibilities. I think it's one of the person who's now said what this is all about is not prison college. This is about college and prison, right? So the academic experience has to be replicated the same as being given on campus. And as I first pointed out, that they do not work, different colleges do not work out one iota what they're presenting. And the students, frankly, have a much harder time. It's not so easy to study in a maximum security cell with the noise. You don't have access to the internet. You do have to make changes. We all recognize that. So they're more motivated to accomplish what they've accomplished. And it's incredible. And certainly we love the multiplier effect. So people in their 30s now think they can get a degree. Some of the challenges, the transferability rates is going to be a challenge. And I'm a big state. I have 28 colleges, and on the outside, what their policy is on transferability, they want to have the same rules inside. So that's a little tricky. One big concern I have, best interest, is job placement in the field of study. Because so much of higher education can be liberal arts, right? We're trying to change how people think of roles to be transformed. It's not necessarily linked to I'm going to get a job in this particular field. That's going to be the measure of success or not. It's going to be the measure of success if this is personal change. And we're going to make different choices. And change is so quickly. Right? Technology is coming along. What you're majoring today could be obsolete 2 years from now. But how do you train yourself to think, to write, create ideas, to do critical thinking and listen? Those are the things that are really important. That's the interest. We don't get too tight in job placement.
Thank you for that. If I could just piggyback off two of the things that you said there. Yes, with regards to transferability, you're correct. That is something that is quite difficult in these spaces. With the neg-reg process, what's going to happen is universities are going to come to the correctional facilities. They're going to complete like a document or something like right now, Vera has a document, a RFP that we have circulated to a number of different correctional facilities that they might wish to use to kind of vet some of these colleges. And some of those on that document, but also in the negotiated rulemaking document, the law, it says that any college that is approved to have Pell funding post July 2023 must have at least one partnership, if not more, with another educational institution within that space for transferability. So that is something that corrections won't have to make sure that you guys do. The educational partner who's applying to be there, they will actually do. And then also, you are correct with the workplace kind of placement. When we were in the negotiated rulemaking process, Ed was very clear that there's some latitude with how things look. Right now, again, the negotiated rulemaking was just kind of like this basic framework for everything. But one of the things that they kind of wanted to make sure was, say, for example, if someone got an associate's degree in liberal arts, if their job that they could get post-incarceration was McDonald's, maybe there needs to be something else that the educational partner could do with community groups and stakeholders to try to make sure that, again, we're making sure that people get that really kind of like livable or above livable wage. So I just wanted you to know that there's a little bit of flexibility there. Thank you very much.
Hey, Tim, did you have a question or a comment? Oh, okay. Well,
Hey, Ann, can I throw one thing in? Just someone else talk. I'm sorry. One thing I wanted to, just real quick, average education in South Carolina is 10th grade. Has anybody looked at technical high schools and having them partner under Pell? Because it takes a lot to get to that you can go to college. I'm not sure that's part of the conversation. That's an internal conversation we're having, as opposed to kind of the college pipeline, but the technical high school pipeline, as opposed to the technical college.
With regards to the negotiated rulemaking process, that wasn't really a part of it, but I will say, wearing my former hat, where we were doing that statewide coalition, with Claflin, they had that community partnership with Healthy Routines, and Healthy Routines was providing kind of like like you think of like an English 101 kind of class for a traditional, they were kind of offering like a life services, like English 100 course. So it was that community partner that we had at Claflin University that was kind of providing more of some of those non-credit, but kind of getting people's, mindsets so that, again, with healthy routines, they're partnered with Denmark Technical and stuff like that. So as that community partner would help facilitate some of those, trying to fill that gap between high school and college. But that certainly doesn't mean that, again, in that statewide system, that high schools don't partner with technical colleges and universities themselves to kind of provide that kind of pathway. Last question I think we're up to.
Thank you. This question is for you, Anne. As you were listening to these negotiations and different meetings in Washington, D.C., and I agree we need to expand internet into many more places. Was there talk or concern at the federal level about how we protect victims with the internet being opened up in the facilities for education, or is that going to be something each state's going to need to look at?
There was not discussion about victims in the course of this that I recall. And I think that that is definitely something that we as states are definitely going to have to pay attention to. And I don't know that it was necessarily opening up internet for this. It's about making it the safe, secure site that they're able to work with the local institution, however that may be. And it may not even be a local institution. Ashland is all over the state, and they're not even in Missouri. So yeah, we're good there. It's definitely not opening up access to the internet.
And I do have a comment. I apologize. I apologize for getting my numbers together. We have a great partnership with Ashland University in the state of Georgia also. And I was getting with my education guy. He said we got 388 that are presently enrolled in post-secondary education in the last 10 years. Anybody who's got to receive a degree while incarcerated has not returned back. That's awesome. Yeah, so I want to make sure.
And I wanted to share regarding the internet. California has been able, we have a 2-year college in all but one of our institutions, so 34 to 35 facilities within California have 2-year college. We've expanded 4-year college to approximately 7, and we're very anxious for the Pell Grants. But I want to say we were able to develop a secure internet site. Basically, it's a corrections internet site. So happy to share that information with anybody who's interested. So no concerns with inappropriate emails to victims or inappropriate research, and it's really for the purposes to facilitate college. We've also provided laptops at our facilities to facilitate somebody drafting a term paper instead of having to handwrite a term paper. So I'm very excited about that.
One last thing, and then I know we really have to wrap up because I know you all have to go to your other meetings. Just with regards to the internet too, one of the things we talked about at NEGREG is, say, for example, a student is currently taking classes online while they are incarcerated. Once they are released, traditionally with the Pell experiment, it was expected that a student, if they did want to continue with that traditional program that they'd signed up for online, Marissa made an excellent point from Montana Corrections, had said for some people while they're on parole, there could be an actual restriction from them using the internet for whatever reason. So Marissa was was fantastic. And this is before Anne had joined the subcommittee and the main committee with helping the rest of us understand that. So as part of the NEGREG process, we have made it so that there are options for people who are formerly incarcerated. Just because you signed up for an online degree program while you were incarcerated, that those individuals should have the option to continue their education in other ways for legitimate reasons, where, for example, it's a violation for them to use the internet by perhaps doing, night classes or on the traditional campus or stuff like that. So I just wanted you to know that there was some discussions about that, and Marissa from Corrections in Montana had actually let us, be aware of that. So part of NEGREG actually takes that into account as well, so that there's more student flexibility.
So I just wanted to just piggyback and share one last comment on what was just mentioned and the fantastic results that you've had. And just to share, one of the things that we almost always say in meetings that we have with folks in the Hill or whenever we're talking about this work is that education is the most powerful tool to, one, keep people out of prison from the very first time and keep people from returning to prison. And the RAND Corporation did a pretty big study that showed that it reduced recidivism by 43%. And, that's from data from, great programs like what you just mentioned, and, great programs like what just was mentioned in California, and great programs all over the country that you all are running. These programs are literally the most effective way to keep people from coming back into your custody. One additional study is that, to the point of, I 100% agree with the idea of technical schooling, but data shows that, education reduces recidivism by 43%. If a person gets an associate's degree, it drops recidivism down into the teens. If a person gets a bachelor's degree, it drops recidivism down to 5%. Person gets an advanced degree, it drops it down to under 1%. So there, certainly is, of course, clear understanding of why we would push for technical education. But I, just want to emphasize the power of education as a whole, regardless of what it is. And I know our program, we are called from prison cells to PhD, but it's more of a metaphor of helping people go from this place of hopelessness and despair and not knowing what to do with their life and moving to a place of self-value, self-worth, and purpose. And for us in our program, we have over 300 applications per year, about 100 people complete per year, and only less than 10% are working on doctorate degrees. Most of our people are working on technical associates and bachelor's degrees. So we help the whole gamut of helping people push forward and using education as this vehicle to help them change, to do, as you said, it's the mind shift and help them change their lives and re-enter into society. So just wanted to drop with that powerful, how powerful education is.
And I think that's a great way for us to bring this session to a close. So Liliana, thank you so much for joining us virtually. We hate you're not here, but we certainly appreciate your support on the Hill and everything that you do for us. Belinda, Stan, great teaser for tomorrow's presentation. Thank you so much for being here. And I will tell you that once the final regs are passed and they get out, we will be having a discussion because there are some things in the weeds that we want people to understand the intent and exactly what it does mean for corrections. So when you see them, don't freak out. We will have a discussion about it, and it's a lot less on us in corrections. So I think it'll make it much easier for us to continue to support this program. So thank you all so much. And Kevin, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. How about a round of applause for our great board? Thank you, Liliana.
Thank you.
Great job, you guys. Not to sound corny or anything, but truly that round of applause, which we'll just count that as good, is for yourselves as well. This was seriously a team effort. As you guys know, many of you around the table, Liliana would contact you, I would contact you. You would have a key elected official back there in DC that we had to get to, that we had to communicate with. And you, of course, are the vehicle for that. So we would go to you, we'd ask if you'd go talk to them. And hopefully, I know what you found. You found the same thing that we find. And that is you carry a very, very strong voice. Like when we go up on the Hill, it matters. I mean, you around this table represent 400,000 correctional professionals and about 8 million people that are incarcerated and or on probation and parole. That's a big footprint It's a very, very big footprint. So when you guys speak around this table, it matters. People listen. So we really appreciate all of your efforts in this regard. It's really going to be impactful for Central, really long, long time. So read the book. Leaders are readers. So read the book and then give it to someone that you care about, maybe someone on your leadership team, and get this thing passed on and on. So again, Stanley, Dr. Andrisse, thank you so much for all that you've done. Here's what we're going to do from here. We're going to make you a little deal. So we're going to go to a break. We're going to take a 10-minute break. In 10 minutes, we're going to have our members and those of you that are around the table come back here. We're going to do our closed door executive session. So it's only going to be members and their deputy directors around the table for this next session. I know on the schedule it shows that we're going to do that for an hour, and then we've got another closed door session for another hour. I suspect we're going to be able to get it all done probably in about 45 minutes. And that way we can get you guys to a good break, go change, get some comfortable shoes on, and all that good stuff. So come back, let's get to work, and we'll get through some things in probably about 45 minutes. Associates, we're going to have you guys start your meeting next in 15 minutes. So we'll start in 10 minutes. They're going to start in 15 minutes because we need John in here for one thing before he kicks that meeting off. John, with the Mallory room, I say Marybelle, she says no, whatever. We're going to go right across this hallway, right across like the escalators, and you'll see it right down that hallway. Okay, so associates meeting starts in 15 minutes. Members start in 10 minutes, and then we're all back together at 4:30 for a reception. Thank you, everyone.